I'm a great believer, particularly with this movie, that the planets aligned. It really has been such a blessed film, and I don't use that word loosely, in so many ways. You know, we were able to get this configuration of actors that was, you know, so more than the sum of the parts. Um, you know, that fantastic version of the script that Lee developed, and I think a time where that combination of a view of a familial life, a view of racism, a view of homosexuality in 2011 and 12, as opposed to the way it was perceived in 1969, and the lessons that we can learn from that. And I think that, as I said, the planets aligned on so many levels. And, you know, sometimes you don't have a reason why something happens 2 years before or 2 years later, but I think it was a magic moment. The fantastic group that we have here of Nicole Kidman, Matthew McConaughey, John Cusack, Zac Efron, Macy Gray, and, you know, Scott Glenn ad infinitum, I think is a testimony to a variety of things. I think there's a paucity of material that's available to actors these days. I think that, you know, we're in a very transitional time of our business, and that everyone knows that at a time where we're, you know, don't know what was down the horizon, the opportunity to do this movie, as small as it may be, and for, you know, very little money compared to what they usually do, it was an opportunity for all of us to pitch in and do something that was really great. Macy Gray plays Anita, the housekeeper of the family, and her relationship with Jack and the humor that she brought to this environment was something that I think people will really enjoy. She is an extraordinary talent and far beyond the sum of the parts of what people think she's capable of. Gives an incredibly sensitive performance, and I think that Zach, particularly, who worked with her, was, you know, kind of moved by what she was able to bring. I think that Lee is a great storyteller, and his vision as a filmmaker is only going to be something that people are going to want to see more and more of. But I think it's important that people realize that he is ultimately a great filmmaker and cannot be categorized as having a type of film that he can do, because I think he can do it all. This is a story about family, and it was a story that needed to be told. And I think that the looking glass of 2012 on society and what goes on in a family dynamic with what we know now, I think is very, very important. And I think that it's a tale that only Lee Daniels could have told. No one in this movie is going to have more of a change in his career than Zac Efron. This is absolutely transitional moment for him. I can't say enough about this boy who became a man before our very eyes. He is so talented. He is coming out of the gate like no one's ever seen him, and he is absolutely extraordinary in this film, and also an extraordinary. Has an extraordinary spirit, and for him to go the places that he's gone in this film is going to be surprise everyone.
It's just one of those things where you just read the first page and then 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 pages, and you forgot that you were reading a script because you just got so engrossed in the story. So it was, you know, it was kind of a no-brainer. And then to work with Lee Daniels is a very cool thing, and I met Lee and we sort of got along right away. I think everybody sort of jumped on board for the same reasons. You know, the story, it sort of starts with the source material, and the story is very captivating, and the characters are very, how do you describe it? They're just human creatures, and they roam Earth, but they're not particularly heroic. They're just very human. Hillary's like the guardian of a threshold in the unconscious somehow. He's like this very strange character who's, you know, in movie language he's the bad guy, but in tragic language he's like some sort of otherworldly creature who's initiating Jack in some way.
I love it when we get the chance as actors to do things that we wouldn't necessarily be cast in initially, that doesn't correlate to our persona, so to speak. And that's what acting is, you know. It's transforming and changing and trying to find a truth within yourself to play somebody that would seem to be polar opposite to who you are. But actually, you know, that's the thing that actually keeps me, I suppose, a part of the world, is knowing that all of us have elements of these characters in us, and being given the chance to, that was just what was so lovely, is that Lee took a chance and said, yeah, I believe you can do it, because most directors wouldn't believe I could do something like this. I mean, I've worked with, on lots of low-budget films, and I've worked with lots of really talented directors, and so I'm used to an unusual vibe and an unusual way of working, and Lee's unusual. You know, he has to feel everything, and our first day was so kind of like just wild, and I love that. You know, that's, for me, that's being an actor, and I love the feeling of, it's kind of like rebel filmmaking, if that makes sense. You know, on the fly, grabbing what you can grab, and there's an abandonment to that, and that's what I think Lee is very abandoned and very raw.
I was looking to work with Lee Daniels as a fan of Precious, and although I didn't know what this script, what it really was, it excited me. And the role, there was a daring thing about the role, almost, that I felt like I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into. There's a shock value to the role that I've never really done anything with this much shock value as the role of Ward. And it just kind of, that's what turned me on about it. He's always constantly looking for something different. Not only from, like, me as an actor, as in he's always saying, I want to see you do things I haven't seen you do before. But in a scene, he's always saying, okay, that's a perfect way to play it. Understand that. That's a realistic and practical, pragmatic way to play the situation. Now let's just flip it on its head and say, you know, what happens if we backed into the scene walking on our hands, so to speak. I mean, there's some great characters that were written in the script, very specific characters. There's no two characters that are really even close to being on the same frequency, which allowed for each actor to really create some great characters through themselves. And then when you got us all in a room, everybody's got a different frequency. Everybody's got a different point of view. Paperboy is really, Zac Efron's story. If it's going to be one person's story, the Paperboy, that would be his character, who goes through more of a so-called arc and comes out the other end. A lot of that is based on his and mine as his older brother's relationship, what he learns from me, how he comes out the other side, the man he becomes. It's shown a lot through his infatuation, lust, and love story with Charlotte character played by Nicole Kidman.
Lee is sort of a genius when it comes to understanding, you know, what makes us human, you know, what makes us real people, what makes us tick, and he's great at figuring out relationships. You know, there's so much of even just a conversation that happens with Lee is not in what you say, you know, it's what happens in the spaces in between, and his understanding of that I think is what makes him such a powerful director. And he's just, at the same time, he's not afraid to turn everything on its ear, you know? You come into scenes and it doesn't read right, he's not afraid to just go, I don't like it, improvise it, go. What he wanted to bring to the Ward and Jack relationship was not, I think it was a little bit complicated, even in the script, you know, the way it is now, it sort of reads the way, like, you know, long lost brothers come together for a happy reunion, and we, you know, take the world by storm, and that's how it could be perceived to be, you know, with hugging and high fives and he's my bro kind of stuff, you know, and Lee was adamant that that's not what their relationship was about. You know, they've been estranged for quite some time now. He sort of helped raise me, but since then he sort of abandoned me, you know, and I don't really know how to treat my brother who's suddenly come back into my life. I think what makes this movie special is that each and every relationship and every part of this story is very real. It goes to the darkest place, and then, you know, through that comes to some of the, you know, the lightest, happiest places you've ever seen. But everything is grounded in the real crazy way that things are. This is very much a coming of age story, you know, a real coming of age story, and Jack is learning from each of these very important people in his life a new lesson, and that's how I felt coming into this. I sort of came in a blank slate. I've only done a few things. I'm still learning what it means to make a movie and to be an actor, and this cast was challenging me on all different sides and in different ways. The first time I read Paperboy, my initial reaction was, wow. It was intense, especially the way this movie ends. It sort of it blew me away. This was like a big journey for a young man, and it was full of all these twists and turns, and goes to some very dark, twisted places and very funny places. But at the end of the day, I couldn't even fully comprehend what was, you know, what was going on, what the story was even about. So it was shocking. It was pretty shocking.
Lee Daniels was directing, so I'm a huge fan of his, and I trust his ideas and his taste in movies. And then I read it, and I couldn't stop reading it. You know, I read it in like an hour or two. I think anyone, you know, no matter how experienced you are or how new you are, could learn a lot from Lee. Just the kind of person he is, and the kind of movies he does, and his fearlessness, you know, is really infectious. You know, you get around him and suddenly you feel like you can go do all this other weird stuff that you want to do. I think it touches on this girl who was in this family, and she's black and is in the 60s, but she has, you know, they're all, she's a very important part of their lives, even though she's just the maid, and even though she is black and it is the South. And, you know, most people who do like domestic work, if you watch them, they're always very irritated. Like, they don't really want to be picking up your underwear. They don't. You know what I mean? And they definitely don't want you correcting them if they miss a spot. So I think it captures a little bit more about what that's like to be a part of a family, but still be the maid. And I think Lee added that little detail in there really well, because you know, there's a lot of movies where it's always scenery, or they're always in the background, or you know, but he made her into a character, and I thought that was cool, and so I really enjoyed playing the part.
The character I was getting to play was a huge reason for me wanting to do it, because in the book, in the original Peter Dexter novel, Yardley is not, you know, African American or black, I should say, and Lee rewrote it with me in mind, and because he also was very interested in, you know, obviously as a black man himself, what a black man in this story in the South in 1969, that adds another layer. So it was all these layers that sort of, you know, made it very clear to me that this would be very, very interesting territory for telling the story. What's very unique about Lee as a director is his ability and his desire to push it. He will push everything. You as an actor, he sees that as, it almost seems to me as if he sees it as a personal challenge to himself to push you within an inch of your talent. When you have actors like Nicole Kidman and Matthew McConaughey and Scott Glenn, Macy Gray, you know, Zach, who's also incredibly accomplished, and you know, for me, it's like a game of tennis. You know, it raises your game when you get to play with people who are better than you. So that's been a real gift.
I knew before I read it that it was going to be directed by Lee Daniels, and I'd seen Precious, and I just wanted to get in the sandbox with whoever did that and play, just because I thought it was such a remarkably beautiful and brave film. I'm getting to do something I've never done before, and go in directions I haven't been allowed to go in before, and not just play strengths but weaknesses, you know, and also it's 1969, and it's a take on 1969 that I don't think anybody's ever seen.